Mongarani Malelepo Fukenjani Class Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa. Good morning. On today's broadcast, we bring you the disturbing accounts of African women who were misled into Russian drone factory jobs and a landmark South African court ruling affirming migrant access to healthcare. We also highlight Uganda-born Zoran Mamdani's history-making victory as New York City's youngest mayor, the closure of the iconic Irma Stern Museum in Cape Town, and a British Ghanaian teen's legal challenge against his parents. Our economic focus turns to Tanzania's post-election turmoil, sports coverage, and we speak with Wilhelm van Niekerk of EMED Rescue 24. Watch Africa Good Morning on DSTV 285, GoTV 25, NTVAfrica.my.na, and NTV Africa on YouTube. That's Africa with a K. My name is Ashwin Berry. Welcome to the show. Top stories shortly.
Life is unpredictable, and one needs to be protected against any eventuality. Get Santam legal access from as little as 50 Namibian dollars a month for when you find yourself in need of legal representation due to civil cases, criminal prosecution, and family matters such as divorce, child maintenance, and custody. It also covers labor disputes, disciplinary hearings, and unfair dismissal or retrenchment. With Santam Legal Access, you'll receive free legal advice on almost every legal aspect, whether the specific matter is covered by your policy or not. For true peace of mind and legal protection when you need it most, call us on 061 292 8000. Santam. This is freedom.
Let's get into the top stories on Africa. Good morning. A 23-year-old South Sudanese woman had joined Russia's Alabuga Start program after seeing an advert promising professional training in logistics and hospitality. Instead, she and other recruits were placed in drone factories restricted by non-disclosure agreements. The program, which denies deception, has faced accusations of exploiting women from Africa, Latin America, and Asia under false pretenses. Adao described harsh working conditions, including chemical burns and long hours, earning only a fraction of the promised salary. A Ukrainian drone strike near the hostel confirmed fears they were involved in military production. Many women remain trapped due to withheld passports and unaffordable flights home. Though the company insists participation is voluntary, testimonies from recruits tell of deception, low pay, and danger. Adao eventually quit, saying she could not work on weapons used in war, calling the experience horrible and devastating to her conscience. In our next story, a Johannesburg High Court has ruled against Operation Dudula, ordering the anti-migrant group to cease blocking foreign nationals from entering public hospitals and schools. The group had been stopping people in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal to check identity cards and deny access to non-South Africans. Judge Lester Adams declared such actions illegal, banning the group from intimidation, hate speech, or unlawful evictions. He further prohibited police from conducting warrantless searches in migrants' private spaces. The ruling follows arrests of Operation Dudula members who obstructed hospital entrances. Rights organization Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia hailed the judgment as critical protection against xenophobic attacks, promising to monitor compliance and hold law enforcement accountable. Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi said the decision reflected government policy that healthcare should not be denied to anyone. Operation Dudula has vowed to appeal, claiming disappointment with the verdict. The group argues South Africans should be prioritized, but officials maintain that such actions undermine equality and human rights in post-apartheid South Africa. Moving on. Uganda-born Zoran Mamdani has made history by becoming New York City's first Muslim mayor following a decisive victory on Tuesday. The 34-year-old democratic socialist, who also spent part of his youth in South Africa, rose rapidly from state lawmaker to national prominence. In his victory speech, Mamdani promised that New York would remain a city built, powered, and led by immigrants, vowing to resist U.S. President Donald Trump's hardline immigration policies. Addressing supporters, he declared, "To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us." Trump had threatened to cut federal funding and intervene in the city Mamdani won if Mamdani won. Despite that, the candidate's pro-immigrant stance and message of inclusivity resonated with voters. His election marks the first time in more than a century that New York will be led by someone this young. Mamdani officially takes office on 1 January, pledging to make the city a beacon of hope during what he called a moment of political darkness. Moving on. The University of Cape Town and the Irma Stern Trust have announced the closure of the historic Irma Stern Museum in Cape Town after 56 years, despite $1.3 million raised in 2022 for its preservation. The museum, once the home and studio of the renowned South African painter, officially shut its doors on 31 October 2025. The collection will be relocated to a secure facility, while the first property will be repurposed with new plans expected in early 2026. The abrupt closure drew public criticism and concerns over transparency surrounding the previously raised funds. UCT and the trust said consultations would be held in November to discuss the museum's future. For over 5 decades, the museum showcased Stern's art and artifacts collected across continents, keeping her studio intact as she left it. Born in 1894, Stern's bold expressionist works earned international acclaim. While many mourn the closure, the trust insists this marks a new chapter to expand her legacy globally. And in the loss of our top stories, a 14-year-old British Ghanaian boy who sued his parents after being sent to a Ghanaian boarding school must remain there until completing his GCSEs, the High Court in London has ruled. The boy was taken to Ghana under the pretext of visiting a sick relative, but later discovered it was a permanent move due to his behavioral issues in London. Claiming homesickness and distress, he sought a court order to return to the UK. After earlier appeals, Judge Mrs. Justice Tace ruled that staying in Ghana serves his best interests and education. The court emphasized that his parents' actions stemmed from concern for his safety, citing previous involvement with knives and school absences. The judge urged family therapy and outlined a roadmap for eventual return post-GCSEs. His solicitor described the case as extremely difficult, while his mother said bringing him back now could endanger him. The boy remains determined to return home despite the court's decision to keep him in Ghana for now. Nothing quite like African parents. When they make a decision, they sure stick to it. Those have been our top stories on Africa Good Morning. Shortly, we'll be looking at our interview with Wilhelm van Nierkerk, who is the managing director of EMED Rescue 24. But prior to that, let's have a look at the weather. In a medical emergency, between your home and the hospital, there are emergency responders, and very often they are the difference between life and death, which is why we were happy to have an interview with Wilhelm van Niekerk, who is the Managing Director of EMED Rescue 24, to tell us more about the business and the services that they give with regards to healthcare in Namibia. Welcome to yet another Africa Good Morning Spotlight. This time I am joined by Mr. Wilhelm van Niekerk, who is the Managing Director of EMED Rescue 24. Greetings, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Ashwin. I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
Fantastic. It's good to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, without, jumping into my own understanding, of course, when you hear EMED Rescue 24, you get a vague picture of what we're talking about. But what services does EMED 24, Rescue 24 provide, and how long have you been operating in Namibia?
Ashwin, thank you. We've been operating for about 22 years now in the operations of the emergency services pre-hospital field. Our focus areas are emergency services for the ambulances, for example. Then we also have on-site medical standbys. We also do training. And then we've got a clinic that focuses on the wellness and screening of patients.
Wow.
In the services that we render, we do the road and the aeromedical evacuations of patients and inter-facility transports. And then we've got quite an adaptable fleet, as well as highly trained professionals, medical staff, that would deliver services from basic up to advanced level of care.
All right. I like that you say that, because I spend a lot of time on Africa Good Morning just looking at the news in various sectors, various health sectors around the world. A service such as this, for example, for an American would literally cost an arm and a leg. And because also you have a decentralized approach to what you do. So I have to ask, how do you ensure rapid and reliable emergency response to remote areas?
A very good question. We've got satellite stations, so we decentralized, as you mentioned, so we've got stations in different towns. And then we obviously surrounding areas as well as the immediate areas covered by that. When an emergency call comes in, we also look at how will we approach this by getting all the information that is possibly available, as much as possible information, considering the road surface areas, considering day and night, considering if there's possibly a landing strip for an aircraft that can come in. So all of the information is then gathered, and as soon as we have that, we do informed decision on what's the best access to the patient, as well as what would bring the patient to the best definitive care facility for treatment.
All right. Now, as you know, information is my job. And
all right.
Information is not possible without technology.
Correct.
What kind of technology and systems do you utilize to support your operations?
We have an in-house developed system, actually, that does our case management system. So if a caller comes in, everything is done on an in-house system. That we log all the details, all the information. It also captures past records as it goes. Then we also have the Panic application that we have available for download. When you register on this Panic app, you push the button, we will get your direct location. We will also get your past medical history as well as medication that you're currently on. And the best part of that is your next of kin information. So should it be that the medics get on site and you are unconscious at that stage, we can also get hold of your next of kin.
Wow, that is incredibly efficient. Just before I continue, what's the relevance of the word 24, the 24 in your name? I'm assuming it's 24 hours.
24 hours a day.
24 hours
24
a day, which is fantastic, because I mean, it's not a health emergency if it's 8 a.m.
That's right.
in general, but of course it depends on what happens. How does, because obviously you don't operate in a vacuum, you're operating within a ministry, within an entire sector, so how do you collaborate with medical and health facilities, for example?
Well, we've got stakeholder engagements and meetings and committees that we serve on. The whole intention is to enhance patient care and access as we go throughout the country. So we've got EMED medical staff sitting on committees and stakeholder engagements with the Ministry of Health and Social Services, the Namibian Trading Authority, MVA Fund, as well as other services that we join, including actually Namibian University of Science and Technology, which offers the bachelor's degree in paramedics. So the intention is always to enhance patient care as well as client satisfaction.
All right, yeah, it's all encompassing, so to speak, and without a doubt you end up assisting, not end up, in nature you assist the government as well in its operations, without a doubt. But of course, it's one thing to be in a business such as this, it's another thing to be able to approach it as meticulously as you ought to, because it's a very exact science. The room for error is
It's
very
very small.
very small margin
Yes,
for error.
that's
So
correct.
what kind of training programs do you offer with regards to your emergency, responders?
On the training side, we first look at our internal development. So we've got an internal development program for our own staff, which we ensure that their skills, knowledge, and mental and physical awareness stays up to date, and that they are doing well, firstly. And then we also have outside training programs for the public, where we are registered with the Allied Health Professions Council to offer the intermediate life support course, which is one of the courses that you require to get into the pre-hospital field on ambulance work. Then we're also registered with the Ministry of Labour as an authorised inspection authority for the levels of first aid, basic fire extinguisher training, which is part of firefighting. We do working at heights and rope access training as well.
All right. Now, aside from being on Africa Good Morning, which is on ntvafrica.my.na, DSTV2 at 5, Go TV 25, how do you raise public awareness?
The raising thereof is getting involved. So going to schools, meeting with communities, discussing with clients and seeing what is the need out there, what is the understanding. And all of those engagements brings about an opportunity to discuss medical and firefighting awareness, preparedness. So a question to people in general: if you work around the house, do you have a first aid kit available? If you are a new mom or dad or work with toddlers, small kids at the preschool, do you know how to help a child that's choking at that stage? If there's a fire that breaks out, do you know where is your assembly points? So all those things, and then of course, how do you alert an emergency services, being it ambulance, fire, or police for that matter? Do you know what the numbers are?
Yeah, I mean, that leads us also into our next question, because when we were talking about health globally, the first word that usually pops up is access. A lot of people do not have access to healthcare. We won't even touch on America like I did earlier before, because that's a whole different ballgame altogether. So right here in Namibia, as EMED 24, how do you contribute to improving the healthcare access? I think I could say, of course, being able to access remote areas, as you mentioned, is already something that you do, but are there any other ways?
I believe there are other ways. I think EMED has grown a culture of adaptability in the environment that we move, and obviously led by emergency situations and the whole healthcare diversity in itself. So being a healthcare management provider, our vision is to provide care through innovation, networking, as well as technology. And then we're looking at the remote and health access. So remote care, being not physically present, but remotely, as well as the healthcare access that is available. So we also constantly in partnership and contact with healthcare developers, partnerships, to see how we can expand the remote healthcare access ability of our patients.
Yes, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned innovation. I say this because for 2020, a lot of healthcare services had to innovate in order to reach the people. They had to, I'm glad you said you have a culture of adaptability. They had to adapt to a completely different landscape, and there was nothing of that scale that had happened, at least in our lifetime. So what role does innovation really play with regards to your service delivery?
The innovation in today's world, being in a current fast-paced environment, ever-changing business environment, I think innovation is the leading change setter, if I can call it that. Being on the forefront of international and global benchmarking of healthcare service providers would be the lead to see how we can improve our best care. So in our circumstances, it would be reaching the rural areas, moving into access, moving into remote care, and seeing what we can do with the new buzzword of AI, digital platforms, and moving in that direction.
All right. Well, I mean, as far as moving on digital platforms, I think you've done a fantastic job by being on Africa Good Morning. Thank you very much for joining us and for alerting and making us aware truly of, the services you provide to the nation. I think a lot of us have seen you in the periphery of our spaces, our events, and we don't always acknowledge how safe we are until we see someone getting stretchered off a rugby field. And very often your first response is life-saving, and we appreciate your contribution to healthcare.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me.
Very good to have you. So that has been Mr. Wilhelm van Niekerk, who's the Managing Director of EMED Rescue 24, and they have a culture of adaptability to your healthcare needs. In a world where politicians promise the moon and deliver potholes, where democracy sometimes arrives in camouflage and ballots often look like formalities, one show dares to laugh with Africa, at Africa, and sometimes for Africa. This is Second Take, your weekly dose of political satire with an African soul and a global edge. From coups disguised as press briefings to ministers moonwalking past accountability, we serve the real news with sharper writing. Each week we bring you the TikTok of the week, because sometimes the revolution is vertical, and the heartwarming moment of the week to remind us that not everything is burning. We also sit down with the bold, the brilliant, and the brave, voices that question power, stir thought, and spark laughter. Because when the headlines are wild, the leaders are louder, and the truth is lost in translation, we all need a second take. Our economic news story focuses on Tanzania. The aftermath of Tanzania's disputed 2025 elections has spiraled into violent unrest that now threatens regional trade across Southern Africa. President Samia Suluhu Hassan, sworn in on November 3, blamed foreign instigators for the chaos, which led to the temporary closure of the Dar es Salaam port and severe fuel shortages in Malawi after border points at Songwe and Kasumulu were shut. Protesters ransacked customs offices and disrupted communication networks, crippling Malawi's cargo sector and leaving pumps dry in cities like Lilongwe and Salima. Economists warn the instability could spark inflation and disrupt agriculture at a crucial time for fertilizer distribution. Tanzania, a vital trade hub within the 16-member SADC bloc and a major node on the north-south corridor linking regional economies, handles significant imports for landlocked countries like Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, including vehicles, pharmaceuticals, and agricultural supplies. Importers fear losses after an internet blackout hampered communication with clearing agents. The SADC Observer Mission has condemned the election, declaring that it fell short of democratic standards and reporting widespread irregularities. Analysts now question the legitimacy of Suluhu Hassan's administration, calling it unrepresentative of Tanzanian voters. Despite criticism, only Zambia's Hakainde Hichilema and Mozambique's Daniel Chapo attended her inauguration, while Zimbabwe's Vice President Constantino Chiwenga voiced concern over Tanzania's instability. South Africa, whose President Cyril Ramaphosa has just been appointed interim SADC chairperson, has yet to comment. Observers warn that continued unrest in Tanzania could strain the Southern Africa economy, with importers forced to seek more expensive alternative routes through Mozambique or South Africa, amid political turbulence across the bloc, highlighted by Madagascar's recent coup. SADC faces a critical test of unity and governance. Let's have a look at the indicators before we wrap it up with sport. In our last story on today's Africa Good Morning, Former Zimbabwe cricket captain Sean Williams' international journey has come to an end following his admission into a rehabilitation program for drug addiction, according to Zimbabwe Cricket. The 39-year-old all-rounder, who has amassed nearly 9,000 runs and over 150 wickets across all formats, made himself unavailable for national selection. ZC confirmed it will not consider him again. Williams had withdrawn from the T20 side ahead of the World Cup Africa qualifier in Harare in September, later revealing his struggle with addiction during an internal probe. The board stated that while it commends his decision to seek treatment, his withdrawal under potential testing circumstances raised concerns over professionalism and ethics. Citing a record of disciplinary issues and unavailability, ZC said it is not feasible to renew his national contract expiring on 31 December. Acknowledging his two-decade contribution, the association praised his pivotal role in key moments of Zimbabwe's cricket history and wished him strength in recovery and success in his future endeavors. That's been our show. Thank you for joining us on ntvafrica.my.na, DSTV 285, GoTV 25, and NTV Africa on YouTube, keeping in mind that is Africa with a K. We do return tomorrow, giving you the video stories which have been making headlines, particularly in Namibia, and of course making sure that you get the top headlines from broader Africa. My name is Ashwin Berry. Let's have a wonderful African day. Swera Jaganaka.